Good evening. We thank all of you for your attendance tonight. Before we call this meeting to order, I know that Mike Anderton is here and wants to address the council and the audience concerning re-election as Jefferson County District Attorney. Or I thought I saw him. Yes. Come forward, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I'm Mike Anderton, and I've never been accused of needing a microphone.
Why start now?
So, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm District Attorney here in Jefferson County, and I wanted to come by and say hello because I want the City Council, I want the citizens of Homewood to know who I am. I grew up here in Birmingham, went to Auburn University. Graduated from there, worked up to Channel 13, then I went to law school over at Cumberland. Graduated from there in 1982. When I graduated there, the only place I could find that was hiring prosecutors was Alexander City. So I went down to Alex City and prosecuted down there for a little bit. But in '84, my wife and I moved back here. And I've been in Birmingham prosecuting criminal cases ever since 1984. Prosecuting the felony cases in court, the capital murders, the murders, the rapes, the robberies, the sodomies, the hubcap cases, everything. And I've done it all, and I love it. I absolutely love it. My wife and I have been married for 36 years, the end of May, the end of this past May. We've got 3 great kids. We got 3 terrific grandchildren. I got a great son-in-law. And they have all grown up and been around me through the last 34 years while I've been doing this prosecution bit. The DA's office has about 90 people in it, 90 employees, about 40 of which are lawyers, deputy district attorneys. We handle right at 7,500 cases a year, 4,000 of which make it past a grand jury, and then those are set at the circuit court or trial level. So we deal with all these cases, and we do it because we want to help victims. We want to put bad guys in jail. That's what we do. We've been doing it a long time, and we want to keep doing it. As long as I'm in charge of the DA's office, we're going to be running this thing straight up and honest and fair. You got questions, call me, we're going to talk. One of the worst things we could do is have a problem with each other and not talk, but rather let it fester. So I do emails and I do text messages and stuff like that. That's about as far as I really get. But emails and text messages can be so misinterpreted. If you see me write anything when I signed in today, I signed my name, but I wrote all my letters in caps because that's the way I write. If you do that in a text message, somebody thinks you're yelling at them. So I don't, if we need to talk, let's talk. Let's just go eyeball to eyeball and let's just have a conversation like real adults. The DA's office works with the Prescott House, which is over here on the south side, where we interview children who have made allegations of child sexual abuse. That place has been in business for 30 years. The nonprofit. If any of y'all would like to go over there, they'll take you in and they'll show you all around because it's a wonderful, wonderful facility. Down at the courthouse, we've got Veterans Court. We've got deferred prosecution program for drugs and alcohol. We've got a gun court out of family court for juveniles who have been caught first time with a weapon. We've got all sorts of programs because what we don't want to do is just start throwing people in jail. That's not what we do. We're supposed to be finding justice. And some of these people out here who goof up, who make mistakes, they just need some help. So I wanted to come by and tell y'all who I was. I wanted to introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. I'm going to be around for a little bit. But if I don't get a chance to talk to you after this meeting tonight, feel free to give me a call. It's the DA's office down in Jefferson County, and yeah, I gotta get elected. I gotta get elected too. but that's November. I'm by here because I want y'all to know who I am. And if y'all have any questions, please feel free to call. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order, and we're going to begin with an invocation. Pastor Marty Crawford from Covenant Presbyterian Church is going to offer it, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand with me.
I want to read just a couple of verses. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Father, as we come tonight, I pray that this group of men and women that you have put here would rule faithfully, they would rule honestly, God, they would rule justly, and they would rule in your love. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Let me just say thank you. Thank you for letting us, anyone like me, but calling for prayer before your meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. All right, Mr. Burgett, call roll, please, sir.
Yes, sir. Mr. Gwaltney?
Here.
Mr. Thames?
Here.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Here.
Mr. Wolverton? Mr. McCluskey?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Smith? Here. Mr. Wyatt?
Here.
Mrs. Andrus?
Here.
Mr. Wright?
Here.
And Mr. Limbaugh.
Here. So we have a quorum tonight. The next item of business is the reading of the minutes from June 25th, 2018. Chair would welcome a motion for dispensing of that reading and approval of said minutes.
I make that motion, second.
Wait a second. Motion for Mr. Taves, second from Ms. Smith. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is unanimous. And secondly, the council minutes from July 9th, 2018. The chair would also welcome a motion for dispensing of the reading and approval of said minutes. Okay, motion from Mr. Gwaltney, second from Ms. Smith. All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Are there any vacancies that we need to announce or appointments that we need to recommend?
We still have an opening on the library board from Ward 5. So I'm not sure when that closed, but we do not have anyone as of yet for that.
You do not have an application?
Do
as of
not.
yet?
So I think we closed it maybe tonight, so we need to keep that open. Do you know, Robert?
I believe, yes, ma'am, close on the 9th. That's correct.
Okay, so we need to,
Why don't we extend that for 30 days or until the second meeting of August? When is that? 16th and 14th, that'd be the 30th?
okay.
Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know that's, sir?
I believe it's the
27th?
27th? Okay. Why don't we extend it until then? And I would encourage any citizen that lives in Ward 5, which is primarily Hollywood, to consider applying. The library board just does a phenomenal job, and Mr. Higginbotham, being a former member of said board, can certainly address how valuable that particular responsibility is. But and I would also encourage you to aggressively pursue someone doing that. So, okay, yes, sir.
Mr. Burgett, when is the BZA for Ward 3, when did that close?
It is closed now.
It is closed now.
We are scheduling interviews.
You were
for
scheduling
Thursday.
interviews.
We have 2 interviews confirmed and 1 tentative for Thursday evening.
Okay.
Good. All right, thank you very much. Anything else involving vacancies, board vacancies, or appointments? If not, we're going to move on to some amendments to the agenda. We have 4. First one is committee referral item. It's 180718, request for consideration of a crosswalk across University Park Place at the south intersection with South Lakeshore Drive, requested by Chief Ross. Oh, that does need to be done tonight? Okay. All right, so we will move that from committee referral to new business. Okay? Hold on. That's going to take a little adjustment on my part. Well, it is under new business. I'm sorry. We had it mislabeled. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The next item is 190718, which is a request for consideration for pop-up vendor ordinances, requested by Patrick McCluskey, and this will be referred. This is a committee referral item, and it will be referred to public safety. Old business 070618, request to approve the city attorney to enter into negotiations with Milo T for headquarter location, requested by myself. And lastly is 200718, which is also new business. And this is, bear with me, request for the council to authorize the mayor to execute the contract with Jefferson County for the Rosedale Sidewalk Improvements Phase 6, requested by Greg Cobb and our BEZ. Is that right, Mr. Cobb? I thought he was here. Phase 6, okay, good. All right, and that's the 4 items. The chair would welcome a motion for approval of the amended agenda.
So moved.
Motion from Ms. Andrus. Second from Mr. Gwaltney. If there's no further discussion, or is there any further discussion? If there is not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved 10-1. Okay, we will move on to the consent agenda. Chair would welcome a motion and a second for approval. Motion from Mr. Higginbotham, second from Mr. Jones. Any comments or questions on the consent agenda, council? If there is not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that too is passed 10-0. All right, we'll move on to our old business, 110618. Public hearing carried over from July 9th, 2018 at 6 p.m. for consideration of condemning a house at the following location, 2900 16th Place South, detached garage only. And this was requested by Mr. Pugh. And Mr. Pugh, can you give us the latest update?
Yes, sir, I'd be happy to. As you recall, Ms. O'Bannon gave her reasoning for why the condition of the structure was as it was, in her mind being that the city had promised her at some point in the past that the creek behind her house was going to be walled. And apparently she's been waiting for many years for that to happen. I called on Greg Cobb, who's served the city in the capacity of engineering for many years, and to his recollection, there is no, there's never been any project scheduled to provide walls in that creek back there. And in fact, on the map, that creek is not shown as an official part of the city's stormwater system. It's simply a natural creek, a natural low spot that flows back there, and it doesn't flow all the time. It's just a wet weather drain off. So that being the case, I have no alternative on my end but to recommend that we go forward with declaring it a public nuisance because it is in a dangerous state of disrepair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pugh. Any questions for him? Mr. Thames?
How
Mr.
far,
Pugh, come back.
and I didn't make it over there, how far away from the structure is the drainage ditch?
It's probably going to be about, I'm going to say 10 to 15 feet.
Okay.
It's difficult to get back there with a tape measure. You'd really need to fight your way back there. So I can't say with absolute certainty, but
You could probably lay the snakes you find end to end to
Yeah. Probably.
All right, any other questions of Mr. Pugh? Thank you, sir, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else here that wants to speak to this particular issue? And again, let me emphasize, this is not condemning the home, this is condemning the detached garage at the same location. All right, if no one else wants to speak to this item, we will close this public hearing. Comments from the council and/or a motion?
I just have a question real quick.
Sure.
So this would be like the other condemnations, even though it's just a garage, where she would have 30 days to make some sort of changes if, like, she could decide to do something with it or
Well,
in
if
that
it,
time period, right?
excuse me, if it goes forward tonight and it gets declared a public nuisance, she will have 30 days to appeal that with
Okay.
the circuit court.
Okay.
Which, at which time we'll be sort of put on a delay.
Right.
Until that's heard, but,
Right.
we work with people. I mean, if she
Right.
came forward with a legitimate plan and a timetable,
Yeah.
we could work with her still.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. All right, Chair would welcome a motion.
Move to declare a public nuisance.
All right, motion by Mr. Wright, second by Mr. Waltney. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor, please say aye. Whoa,
Point
stop.
of clarification over here.
Are we declaring it a public nuisance, or are we condemning it?
We're condemning it.
Okay, well, that's two different.
Mr. Wright,
Yeah,
I'm
that's two
sorry.
different. That's
Did
two
I say public
No,
nuisance?
I think Mr. Wright said public nuisance.
different. Yeah. No, it's actually.
Would you be willing
Condemnation
to
of
amend
the
your motion
garage
to-
is
Let
the
me,
motion.
let me modify my motion to, to defer to Mr. Kendrick.
Yeah, the basis for the condemnation is it is a public nuisance. It's not safe for the public. So you're correct, and both sides are correct. It is a condemnation, which is a result of your declaration that it is a public nuisance.
But I want to be more correct than Mr. Wright.
That's
I'll
not
leave that
possible.
to you.
So I guess the motion stands then.
Thank you, sir. And you still second it as well? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this is Resolution 18101, and so be it, Mr. Pugh. All right, next item is 080618, which is public hearing set for tonight for consideration of the preliminary development plan submitted by applicant Charles Kessler, Cadco LLC, for owner Charles Kessler, Ben and Ashley McCullers, and Albert Evans for 800 through 808 Salter Road and 809 Carr Avenue to develop a 12-lot subdivision. And we will point out that this request was considered by the Homewood Planning Commission at its meeting of June 5th, resulting in a favorable recommendation by a vote of 7-0. If I can, let me say a couple of things here before we get the report from Planning and Development, Mr. Thames. There are quite a few people here, I understand, that want to speak to this item, and we want to hear what you have to say. That's what a public hearing is all about. I would ask you to be not like the president of your city council, myself, and be focused on this, and therefore, if we could ask you to limit it to 2 minutes, and nobody's going to hit you with a gavel if you go a little over, but seriously, we want to hear what everyone has to say. So if you can be as succinct as possible, that would be a good thing. Secondly, Robert is going to offer a sign-up sheet for you, and before you speak, we would like your name and your Homewood address, if we could have that. So we've got a record of your time with us. So if you will, please plan on going ahead and anybody that wants to speak, go ahead like now and line up and sign in. With that, report from Planning and Development, Mr. Thames.
President, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is 90618, does that go, shouldn't that go first? Maybe I'm thinking.
Mr. Kendrick?
Under the zoning ordinance, you have to approve the development plan prior to rezoning.
Prior to rezoning.
So essentially, the development plan, if approved, would be an exhibit to the rezoning ordinance, Exhibit B. Exhibit A is the legal description of the property. So the appropriate action is that prior to rezoning or considering rezoning, you have to approve the development plan.
Thank you. Mr. Times?
Yes, sir. The committee met, and after hearing a report from the Planning Commission involving the approval of the preliminary development plan that involved a long list of proffers by the applicant, voted to send this out without recommendation pending the public hearing.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's open the public hearing and look forward to hearing what folks have to say. Yes, the applicant does need to come up first. Thank you for that reminder. Your name and where you live.
My name is Jason Kessler. Our office address is 3505 Benton River Road, Birmingham, Alabama 35216. I think at this point, the City Council, Planning Commission, everybody's heard a lot about this proposed development. I won't take up too much time going through the entire presentation again. But the gist of it is this is currently, I guess, 5 lots, and we're trying to turn it, to rezone it and resurvey it into 12 lots, with one of the homes that's currently on the property staying in as part of the development. You know, we made a lot of, as Mr. Thames said, a lot of proffers during the process of working through this, through the Planning Commission. We changed our plan multiple times. We offered to, you know, change our covenants so that accessory structures and a gated community can never be allowed in this development. We changed our lot sizes. We cut our lot density from 15 to 12. Side setbacks we changed to meet NPD requirements. Our height restriction in our homes we changed to meet NPD requirements. We feel like we've done the due diligence required of us, or anybody that wants to try to rezone or resurvey anything, meeting with city council members, the school superintendent, the neighbors on multiple occasions, trying to make sure that we're doing this by the book, trying to do it right, and work with everybody in good faith. That said, we do understand that from the feedback we've received that this is unlikely to be approved tonight. So really, again, I don't want to take up too much time. I know this is going to get open for public hearing. I'm of the opinion, too, that understanding that this is not going to get approved, that you know, the public hearing may be hopefully limited with people understanding that's not going to happen. One question I would like to ask, just because, again, we've done everything that we feel like we can, and we've even heard from at least 1 or 2 city officials that as far as just the plan itself, our PRD1 plan is a better plan overall than what we can do under the current NPD zoning guidelines. So our question is, again, not knowing, but from the feedback we've received, what is the biggest concern? And if I need to come back up and ask that later, I can do so after the public hearing. But we're just trying to look for some feedback, thinking that we've got a really, really great plan here. The concerns with the city council, what they may be.
Well, I'm speaking for myself. I want to hear the concerns from the citizens before we answer that question. That's the purpose of a public hearing.
Sure.
But I will say to you that my fellow council members and myself have received a substantial outpouring from the community in the area. And I expect the response that we're going to hear in the next little while is going to be similar to the texts and emails that we have received. Having said that, you're the developer. You have if you've got any formal requests you want to put forth, great. If not, we'll go forward.
Right, and again, yeah, happy to address any of the concerns from the public hearing. But again, that's the gist of it, and so we'll just leave it to any questions you may have, and if not, the public hearing.
Well, let's wait 1 second. Is there any other questions that anyone wants to ask Mr. Kessler on the council?
I would like to ask why the need, why, if you're going to meet all of the NPD regulations, why are you pushing forward for a rezone?
Well, the NPD, we couldn't meet all of them, and that's how we kind of came up. Well, we met with the city staff, and they were the ones who looked at the piece of property overall and said that the PRD1 would be a good option. The biggest issue that we have would be the square footage of the lots, just due to, there's two different NPD calculations that we're working with, one for Carr and one for Salter, and they're separate. But we've got to make it all fit together like a puzzle. And the square footages of the lots was the biggest issue that we ran into. So we could offer as much as we could, and we tried to, again, with our height restrictions, our side setbacks. Front and rear became very hard to do. We couldn't meet 25 and 20. We did 20 and 15. But again, that was the biggest issue we ran into. We couldn't quite make it fit under NPD. We just tried to make it fit as NPD as we could.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Jones, please.
Was there any type of traffic study done as part of the plan?
Good question.
With the application that we turned in, and this was at least a few months ago at this point, there was a simple traffic study done the way that somebody in our office did it based off of I can't remember what it's called, but there's a guidebook of which to do it. But it should have been in the application, but that is the only traffic study that was done.
Okay, I hadn't seen that, so maybe somebody has a copy.
And it may not have, I don't know if that passes through from Planning Commission to City Council or if it doesn't, but it was turned in with our original packet.
While you're here, was there a traffic study that you saw, Mr. Thames?
I do not recall, not one performed by the city.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. All right. Sir, you were first, and please come forward. Whoever was first. There you go. And again, if you'll state your name and your address and go.
Charles Mender Hout,
Good.
101 Oglesby Avenue. I was here before, and I had just a couple concerns, and that was the noise about my wife, and that I wanted the water taken care of. But my wife and I have been talking about it, and we studied it, and we moved to Homewood back in 1979. And we moved here for 3 reasons. All the trees, beautiful neighborhoods, quiet, and the schools. We're living in Inslee. I just got out of the service, and my mother had some property there, and our neighbors in Inslee were shooting at each other. So we wanted to get a place, and when I finally was making enough money, I was still going to UAB. I graduated, went to work for an insurance company, and we had enough money, we moved to Homewood. My son, we've got one child, when he got old enough, and I was working for Bell South at the time, I was making enough money to move. He didn't want to move. He had a girlfriend, all of his friends he could walk to. And what they want to do, change the zoning, is going to mess up the neighborhood. I almost said a bad word. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Please don't change the zoning. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. All right, next.
I forgot one thing. I sent to y'all an email, sent a check from Alabama Power for $18,000, and that was because a power line dropped down on Al's easement, and the easement is where they wanted to put the park. Please don't put a park there. Kids might die.
I understand.
$18,000 fix the roof on my house, but I don't think you can $18,000 fix a child.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I've got my stopwatch on.
Thank you. So do I.
This is a written protest by Charles Amos Thompson. I'm a 72-year-old attorney. My father built a house at 706 Carr Avenue. He did it on Saturdays. It took him 3 years. He completed it in 1948. As a 3-year-old, I moved in 1948. Currently, I am the co-owner of 706 and 708 Carr Avenue. I'm the landlord. I live at 3174 Pipeline Road, Vestavia Hills. That area where this is proposed has restaurants nearby. I think Gianmarco, and I don't know if JoJo's is open or not. But they have a major parking problem there. The area has heavy traffic when the restaurants are open. This will increase when you start developing this. Short Salter Road used to be two-way. Now, because of lack of parking, it's now a one-way, and you can go up there after working hours, and it's maxed out on parking there, and it's a one-way. The water drainage will increase with new construction of houses and driveways. Vehicle traffic in front of my property will increase. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
141.
You did well. Next.
John Chashy, 836 Acton Avenue. I have a couple questions first. Is anybody seen an official survey by a surveyor that this is in fact 2 acres? I didn't see one, so I was just wondering if that's been completed.
Mr. Thames?
Mr. Cobb can probably answer that, but I believe a survey would have had to have been submitted in the rezone packet.
Okay. All right. I'm against the rezone due to the fact that it adds unwanted congestion to our neighborhood. I also think that it's important as city council members to ask people that come up here and speak if they have any financial interest or will make any financial gain by this development. I think you'll find that the vast majority of people that are against it don't have a financial gain. I think that it's telling that Mr. Kessler is moving back to Homewood, but he didn't buy a house and doesn't want to build in his own development. I wonder why. Is it because it'll be so congested? I'm not sure, but I think that that's telling. We submitted a 40-person petition against the rezone in the other committee. I forgot the name of it, but in the prior committee. And I did want to say that we're not 100% against redevelopment, but we're united against this rezone, and we don't want it, and we don't like it as neighbors. And also had another question about, we were told that the zoning was not going to be voted on today. Is that accurate?
No.
Okay, because we received a text message, my wife and I'll be happy to share it with y'all. But we received a text message from, I believe, Walter, that said, CADCO has withdrawn their request to rezone. Thanks, Walter.
I can address that. That's what I got from Mr. Cobb. Mr. Cobb, you want to?
Okay.
There was a discussion of him withdrawing that's what I understood from Mr. Cobb. So I passed that along when I heard that.
Sir, to be fair, we've gotten conflicting reports as individual council members.
Well, I would request that we not be able to vote on it tonight, because if y'all are going, if there's city councilors telling people it's not going to be voted on, there's people that didn't show up tonight because we were told by a city councilor that it's not going to be voted on. And I understand y'all have an obligation,
Right,
but
I'm trying to pass along information as I get it.
Y'all have to understand how we feel as neighbors if we're told by a city councilman that it's not going to be voted on, and then all of a sudden it is voted on. That I feel like I'm getting the wool pulled over my eyes. But
No, it's a fair a statement, but, well, all I can tell you is that that's absolutely not what happened.
Right.
But there was conflicting information.
I'll be happy to show the news the text messages if they want to see it, because
No
I don't
problem.
think it's really fair, and I just wanted that to be on the record.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Cobb.
Yes, sir. Last Wednesday, Mr. Kessler came in my office and he had another plan that worked with NPD calculations. And he and I sat and discussed that plan. It looked like a very nice plan. And he told me then he was going to drop his rezone and go with the new plan. Today, Mr. Kessler called me back and said it was the other plan B was not working out, and he wanted to move forward with where we were with tonight's planned meeting.
It's a bait and switch.
Well, again, sir, we're going to listen to every single individual tonight who wants to speak, okay? Thank you, Mr. Cobb.
Okay.
We appreciate it. Next. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Nika Javaris. I live in 108 Acton Avenue. I've been there since 1965. I have seen everything, and I just want to tell you, when I first moved there, I went and visited all my neighbors, and I asked them a question. I said, would you mind telling me what is the biggest investment that you have made? And they says, a home. I said, why don't we all start taking care of the houses, cleaned them up, built the neighborhood, and we did, and it's streaked over to Oglesby Street. Now, I want to tell you something. They bought the property, they bought 5 homes there, they can build 5 homes there, no problem there. But if you vote for them to rezone, what's going to happen, you just have a can of worms, you open it up, and it triggered all over the city of Homewood. There'll be more problems than anything else, so please reconsider. No rezoning. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. That was succinct. We appreciate that. Next.
Thank you for hearing us tonight. My name is Lisa Group, and I'm at 807 Acton Avenue. I am one of the abutting properties. And you guys have heard from me on email, so I'll just hit the high points and be brief. I support the current Edgewood Master Plan and its NPD zoning. We don't have any water problems now. We don't have leaks. We don't have floods. When we bought, we were informed that we were on a high water table, and we took some care in the building so that we would not have problems, and we don't. When this situation came up and CADCO hosted a neighborhood party in the mud and the pouring rain, I did go out and speak directly to Mr. Kessler Sr. and express my lack of support for such a big subdivision on these 5 lots. Because I felt like it would negatively affect my property. And they always say that no one ever said anything negative, but I was there and I said something negative. I'm also concerned about the traffic study. I know that there's something, Mr. Thames, about something that CADCO did themselves, but I'd like for like a real one to be done. By somebody that has an impartial relationship to the project, because I do have some concerns about Short Salter, just because it is kind of a screwed up situation over there with it being one way. I've also, gosh, it kind of makes my head hurt, and I do have a PhD. To think about the runaround that we've been getting. So let me think back to when there was an NPD plan on the table, there were a lot of driveways onto Carr, which, I think is, might happen and it might be okay. And I'd like to see a traffic study. There might need to be a 4-way stop put at Acton and Carr, but somebody needs to be looking at that situation if that comes to pass. I'm also concerned about these covenants and these words like never that get used. If you're going to have an HOA and you're going to have covenants and restrictions, this thing started out as a gated community. Now we've got promises that that there'll be covenants against that. There's going to be an HOA that they are going to. Let's see, Kessler's going to keep it while it's under construction, and after construction it will go back to the neighborhood. And then they, as an HOA, they'll have whatever power is written into their HOA, right? So I think it creates an imbalance of power with the HOA and the things that they might decide to do in the future. You can't say words like never when you're not going to control it the whole time, right? It's eventually going to be turned over. I don't
3.5, ma'am.
I don't have any compelling interest to support PRD1, and I feel like I have a lot of interest in maintaining NPD, the lot sizes, the restrictions, but also just the preservation, the reason that we call it NPD. I feel really strongly that I support that, and that I would like for others who develop in that area, there are 2 houses next to me that are being redeveloped, to follow those guidelines and to mind those rules. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next. Name and address.
Becky Laurent, 345 Lucerne Boulevard. I'm about 2 miles away from this proposed development, but I can assure you that my car has worn a groove and car run into Publix. 2 points. When the development on the Broadway Triangle went before the Board of Zoning Adjustments to get some relief and be able to put more houses there, the developer seemed like a great guy. A lot of the neighbors were in favor. The plan looked pretty good on paper. But now that we see those houses in the flesh, they have really overwhelmed that area. And in retrospect, I think it was a mistake to have those variances granted. So, you know, here we have another high-density proposal for the very same neighborhood. And the other concern that I have is where we live, a lot of the homeowners have 3 or 4 vehicles. So if you have 4 extra homes in this development, if they don't all fit in the driveways, where are those cars going to sit? And I have to say that the crowd in the room was just amazed when there was a unanimous recommendation in favor of rezoning. And I'm asking y'all to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Just to clarify, there was not a unanimous recommendation to recommend rezoning from the Planning Commission. It was a 3-3 no vote.
Was it the development plan?
Correct, the development plan, which is an attachment to the rezone request, as Mr. Kendrick explained.
Ms. Ellaby.
Liz Ellaby, 612 Cobb Street. I was just going to make a suggestion before I heard about the switcheroo with the plan tonight. And that suggestion was, would the council or the Planning Commission consider coming up with a statement or a policy that of the kinds of zoning projects that they prefer and would welcome, as opposed to the kinds of projects that, like this, that would create a lot of furor and upheaval, where you're taking an island out of a preservation district and zoning it down. It seems to me that there would be some rules of thumb that you all could call on and just publish, maybe along with the literature, the packet that goes to developers, so that they know going in, this is what Homewood is all about. These are the kinds of rezonings that are welcome, and these are the kinds of things that we're going to take a hard look at. That's my comment.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Hi, my name's Megan Kane. I live at 210 Acton Avenue. We built a couple of years ago, and one of the best compliments that we received, we were a new build, by the way, is we love the reno. The house looks great. We worked really hard to try and look like the rest of the neighborhood. If you've been on Acton, the houses are small and charming, and it looks like Homewood. And so I am all for development. I'm not for 12 houses. That's a lot of houses, and houses that we're not sure what they're going to look like. But if we're not going to go by NPD, then it's probably not going to be the charm that we're looking for. That's my concern. There is currently a home that is beautifully done that would be a part of that development. I would love to see 4 or 5 more homes that look like that, but I would not like to see 12 homes and 2 acres. And I'm not in favor of the rezoning either. So thanks for considering this, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
I'm Martha Ann Cooper. I live at 306 Grand Avenue. And I just have a request for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not here to talk you into anything or talk you out of anything, but I think every one of you here is voted, you got into your position by being voted in there, if I'm correct. And there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. One person you talk to understands it one way, another person understands it another way. And somehow I feel like the facts are getting lost. I think it's up to you all to decide what's really best for Homewood. And we can all stand up here and say, well, I think this is best, and I think this is best. But ultimately, it's going to be your decision. And I would just ask you to do what you really think is best for Homewood. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
I'm Gary Johnson. I live at 220 Oglesby. I've lived there for 17 years. I'm coming tonight to voice my disapproval and non-support for the change in ordinance. I do support the NPD. I'm learning as I arrive here tonight there's been some kind of switch of a roo, and I'm really disappointed to hear that. And I look at my folks, Patrick, and to, Walter. Certainly, you all have echoed your support for our community, and I certainly hope that we will continue to honor the NPD plans that we have. And I also hope that we will follow the master plan. You had a very articulate woman on television this week talking about the Homewood master plan and the importance of it and the desire to continue to make our neighborhood a better place. And this change does not do that, because there's no reason I, as a taxpayer who love this community, my community, and support this community, I am not allowed these same changes in zoning ordinances. So why should a builder be able to do that? And to correct the woman who just spoke, there's really not a lot of misinformation or confusion. There's a change, either an NPD plan or not. So the confusion is not there. We're not confused. We want to have the NPD plan, not to have the zoning change, and to have 12 homes put into that small space. And if you take into account this change, the pink house, and what we understand you can do, you're adding almost, 16 to 17 homes in those two small spaces. Please, as the woman just said, make the right decision for Homewood, the community that we love and are vested in seeing the best for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, if you haven't signed in, please do so. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Giles. I currently live at 100 Venetian Way, so I live in West Homewood. Up until a year ago, though, I was living at the end of Mountain Ridge, and so many of my neighbors that are here speaking tonight for my first 6 years here in Homewood were my direct neighbors, now just fellow Homewoodians. I, like a lot of folks who are speaking out against this, am not against redevelopment. I love Homewood. I came from a big city. I love the charm. But I also recognize we have older homes in our neighborhoods, and our homes need to be renovated. They need to be upgraded to meet needs. And I think that the Neighborhood Preservation District is wonderful in that plan, giving us a guideline that we can all, as individuals, do that fairly. As the gentleman who just spoke said, when you start taking our property and allowing our developers to gobble up pieces of it, to chunk together 2 acres, and then rezone it to PRD, and then plop 12 houses on it, you've taken the power and the ability of individual residents to maintain their environment and their community the way they want, and you've given it to developers. Because now our value isn't in our individual home, it's can a developer come in and gobble up and sit on some land and then get enough to PRD and then plop 12 houses. Specifically for me, I live at the corner of Oak Grove and Venetian Way. There are 3 homes right across the street from me that are older homes that sit on massive lots. I acknowledge that at some point, the older residents who live in those homes will probably sell those houses, and we will probably see those lots resurveyed, and we'll see more houses directly across from our street. What I hope and I pray is that we do not set a precedent tonight that what I'm going to see across my street is 4 or 5 nicely done houses that fit our current NPD plan, but 30 or 40 houses because of the size of that property, because we've set a precedent here that says developers come in and take over and add unwanted density to our community. I would also like to point out, Ms. Andress, thank you for your communication back to me. When I've reached out to my city council members, I will say, and I am sorry for calling you out, and it's unfortunate that Mr. Wolverton isn't here, but Mr. Higginbotham, I have emailed you 2 to 3 times on this item, including as recently as last week. And it is very disappointing for me as somebody of Ward 2 trying to get information from you and your perspective on this, that I did not warrant a return email. So I hope that you can all continue to be responsive to your residents. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
since I was personally addressed, let me make clear, the reason I did not respond to the email is I do not comment on zoning cases prior to them coming before council. That has been my policy on every zoning case that has come before this council. It will continue to be my policy, but I do apologize. I did not send you an email that said I do not comment on zoning cases before they come council.
The important part is that you're establishing and opening up the dialogue with the residents to acknowledge you at least heard my concerns, are in the process, and understand what's important.
As I said, I apologize. I did not send an email to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Heather Brewer, 1513 Valley Place. I have no vested interest specifically in this development, but I do have an interest in preserving the charm of Homewood. Quite some time back when we kind of went through what the height requirements and things were going to be, I was very interested in that conversation. And maybe at the end, I didn't exactly kind of get what I thought would have been reasonable, but we did end up with something. So I think we should really stick to kind of the guidelines that everyone has fought so hard to kind of get in place. Probably not everyone's happy with them, but everyone's comfortable with them. And I think that everyone should be stuck with the same guidelines that I personally would be stuck with in my own development. And so I would, request not rezoning the property.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
My name is Craig Boyette, 100 Acton Avenue. I'm totally against the rezoning. We've gotten a lot of information and misinformation on how many houses and the whole 9 yards. I think we definitely need traffic study. We need a parking study, but it needs to be done at night when Jean Marcos is cranking out the people and JoJo's cranking out the people. We've had issues with rescue vehicles not being able to come down Carr because of the parking. It's at night. If you do a study in the day, you won't see that. But you throw 12 more houses in the mix, driveways on Carr, we'll have people park for 4 blocks around, blocking streets and doing whatever they do. We're not in favor of it at all. Any kind of development is reasonable, but 12 houses is not reasonable. We acknowledge there's vacant lots, there's older homes they've probably already purchased, I'm sure, and new house looks better than an old house for sure, but I'd just ask everybody to think about it. Let's vote this down and send them back to the drawing board and come up with something that reflects Homewood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Hey, I'm Chris Whaley. I'm at 804 Acton Avenue. I'm about pitching wedge. Nope, 9-iron away from the proposed development. I think it's hard going last because a lot of people make the good points that you want to make earlier on. I think I'm against the development largely because it's not fitting with the feel and the theme of Homewood. I think the neighborhood preservation district is the way to go. I think it sets a nice standard for what homes should feel like and the neighborhood feels like in this area. And so, I do want to make the point that other people have made as well, is that Homewood is a developing city. I mean, there's plenty of development going on within the city itself, and none of us are really against that development. I think development for development's sake is where we begin to get a little worried about it. And so there's no doubt in my mind that these properties will get built on and that nice homes fitting within the theme that we like to enjoy will be built there. And so that's not really a concern, I think, of anyone here. It's just the overdevelopment is what I think we're concerned about. And I'm glad a lot of our neighbors are here. It's nice to know that I know there's been a little bit of difficulty with communication about what was going on at this meeting. Was there going to be a vote? Was there not going to be a vote? If you're relaying that information that there may not be a vote and you learn otherwise, it probably is wise to communicate with the people that you told that there wasn't going to be a vote so that they can make adjustments, even if you can't reach everybody. I know y'all talk to a lot of people during the course of the week, and so, but at least reach out to some so that we can spread that information amongst ourselves as well. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next, and did you sign in?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes.
I'm Jolene Lewis, and I live at 821 Acton Avenue, and I am opposed to the rezoning. And I also would like to ask for a traffic study to be done, and I would like to get some information about how this may possibly affect the floodplain. As
I'm
a
sorry, what-
resident, the floodplain. As a
Okay.
resident of 821 Acton Avenue, I have met with Mr. Cobb on many occasions. He probably knows me well. I've had to make many improvements to my home, and I have spent thousands of dollars since I bought my house because I live in a floodplain. And I'd like to know what effect this would have potentially on my property. I'm sure that there are other people, but I actually live in the lowest part of that street, so I'm most affected by the floodwaters when that happens, and it has happened several times in the time that I have lived there. And so I am asking for that information to be ascertained and to given to us so that we can make a determination as to how this would affect us. You know, when you have less water, less dirt, less ground available for the rain to fall, it has to go somewhere. So where is it going to go, and are we able to handle that?
Thank you. Next. And again, you've signed in, correct? Thank you.
Hey, I'm Paige Wilcutt, and I'm at 114 Oglesby. And I'm not going to repeat what everybody said, but I'm against the PRD one for all the reasons that they said. But please, regardless of if it's 12 houses, 6 houses, whatever, please do a traffic study. I have a 15-year-old, and we pull out, and it's like cars on both sides parked. Gianmarco's bringing in traffic. When the Publix, it's just a speedway through there when everybody's rushing to Publix in the afternoon. So regardless, there needs to be a traffic study because it's just dangerous pulling out at that intersection, and Oglesby becomes the valet parking. They'll zip down Oglesby and go the circle for Gianmarco. So there needs to at least be that consideration.
I understand. I have a question. Did the three-way stop not help the traffic? I see a couple of people nodding their heads yes, so.
It helped, but you know, that one way on Short Salter, and
Sure.
it kind of, it'll back up on Carr during like heavy traffic times, and if we put 6 driveways on Carr, or however many that they were suggesting, if you don't change the zoning, with multiple cars, I don't see how that's really gonna flow. It's just you're gonna back up Oglesby, back up Acton, so there needs to be some studies or
No,
somebody
I
come and look
agree.
at that.
And I also agree that if we're going to do the study, it should be done in the twilight hours when
Absolutely.
the traffic's there.
Absolutely.
I
Anytime
couldn't
from
agree
about
more.
3 till dark, or after dark even. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Flavin. I live at 113 Oglesby. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I implore upon the council tonight to deny this rezone. CADCO bought this property knowing that it was zoned NPD, and the city has gone through great lengths to set the rules associated with NPD. To then allow an outside developer to come in and buy a property and rezone that property to circumvent those rules is absurd. Furthermore, it sets a terrible precedent. What is to stop other developers from following suit? CADCO has argued this is a unique situation, except that it's not a unique situation. There's property for sale all over Homewood right now. Look at the corner of Forest and Cliff Place. It's a large piece of property for sale. There's an adjacent property for sale. If a developer were to buy up all that property, who knows how many homes they could put there. Also, I believe this development will only exacerbate the traffic situation on Carr and Broadway. I turn left out of Oglesby every single day to get to work, and if anybody's turning left from Short Salter and they whip out, you have to time yourself you have to be very careful. And I think this development will only make that will make it worse. I also think the schools are already overcrowded currently. This is only going to cause more overcrowding, and the precedent it sets will cause further issues down the road for the schools. As other residents have mentioned, the drainage issues, this is also going to exacerbate those. So please enforce the current zoning restriction on the properties in question and protect our beloved community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next. please come forward, sign in.
Ben McCullers.
Have you already signed in? I'm sorry.
what?
Have you already signed in?
No, I will. I'm Ben McCullers. I live on the corner of Short Salter. Gentleman kind of said, you know, people who are only for it are getting a financial gain from it. So I guess I'm coming in defense of myself here, which is funny because I haven't even talked numbers with anybody. So that for him to say I'm getting a financial gain is kind of comical. But I've heard about 10 people say the charm of Homewood. What does that mean? The charm of Homewood. See, before about 6 months ago, because that's when the developers came and knocked on my door, I didn't ask them to, they came to me and, you know, tried to talk business with me. Would we be interested? Sure. But my deal is, what's the charm of Homewood? We're both, me and my wife are kind of second generation Homewood people, so we've been here since the early 70s. But it used to be the people, not the houses. Because quite frankly, people are talking about the island, you know, the triangle. Well, I've met and my new neighbors, they're wonderful people. And I really hate to hear when people talk bad about their houses, because beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? And they're not here to defend themselves. They're for this. But quite frankly, they got better things to do. But the thing is, see, they're talking behind me. I'll just gavel. But my problem is, I've had people who basically are blaming me, a citizen.
But please let Mr.
I'd like to
McCullers
regain
have
my
his
time, reclaim my time, please.
You're going to have your time, sir.
Thank you.
Please, go ahead. No comments, please, one at a time.
But what I'm saying is they're blaming me. I've had people come up in my yard when I'm throwing the ball with my 6-year-old son, pointing their finger in my face saying, this is all your fault. To which I have to tell my son to go inside and nicely escort this person off my property. But that's what we're dealing with. That's what this has turned into. It's really, the people used to be what is great about Homewood, the charm about Homewood, not the four walls, okay? And I don't know what y'all are gonna vote. Quite frankly, I would say I don't care, but I don't even care. But what I'm saying is, when you have people walking up the sidewalk that won't even look at you in the eye, that won't even say, good morning, good afternoon, hey, how are you? That's a problem. And that's what this has turned into. So I say, my argument is the charm of Homewood, but it's also the precedence that's set. And I just say, you know, I look at this as the squeaky wheel gets the oil, because the more people argue and argue and argue, it's the people who, quite frankly, are being about as polite and treating y'all with the utmost respect, who are the ones who are kind of being blamed or being, in my opinion, mistreated, because we don't deserve it. I haven't done anything. I'm not asking anybody for anything. So I just say, to the precedence that's going to be set, you're going to do what you want to do, but the precedence is also, you know, if I just don't want Homewood to go down a road that, you know, to give in to the mob mentality, because the more we don't like this, you're going to get what you want. That's not a good precedence to set either. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
McCullough. Next, please. All right, if there is no one else who wishes to speak to this, by the way, we've now had, by my count, 19 individuals speak, so I would say to you that's a pretty significant representation of our community. If there are no other comments, and I assume there are not, then we will close this public hearing. And I would welcome comments from the council first. Anything that anyone wants to say, because a lot of information has been put forth here.
I'll say something.
Ms. Smith, go.
And it's
And then
gonna
Mr. McCluskey.
It's going to be very short and sweet because it's not my word, it's Mr. McCluskey's and Mr. Jones's. I will say, I do hate that this has kind of become us against them in a neighborhood that's full of great people. But I will say, it's not so much for me giving into a mob mentality. It is very much about protecting the things that I think are very special about Homewood. I do use that intersection frequently. I am concerned about the traffic that will be added when you add 12 houses to an already very congested area. I am also concerned about the density of the development. I know, Mr. Kessler, you asked what some of our concerns were, and those, frankly, are my two major concerns. The effect that it'll have on traffic, and frankly, a traffic study by someone in your office is not really sufficient for what that, we need an expert who's not involved in the project, who would be an objective person who could give a more, clinical and professional and expert answer as to how the traffic would be affected. I do think the density of the development is a concern for me, and I don't endorse anybody walking onto anyone's property and blaming them for something that's certainly beyond their control and not their fault. But I do think that there are concerns that are valid, and as has been expressed here tonight, and I do share some of those concerns. So, for your question, that's what it is to me.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. McCluskey?
Yes, thank you. Of course, several things to say. A couple of different things just to make sure that we're clear on some items. I believe one gentleman said something about the traffic has become worse on Short Salter due to, or that it become one way due to all the parking problems. Well, Short Salter was one way before they put the parking on. I just want to make sure that that's clear. And then there was a question about the driveways on Carr, the additional driveways on Carr, and of course that has nothing. That's the NPD plan that might or might not come back. That's not the PRD1 plan. So again, I'm just making it clear, not making a statement one way or the other on it. To sort of reiterate what Mrs. Smith said, Walter and I, and of course all the other council members, have had numerous conversations, emails, discussions with residents, with the developers. Walter and I had a meeting with them not 2 weeks ago, and expressed our concerns in regards to the fact that the zoning was the big issue for us. There was a meeting that was actually scheduled with some residents that I missed, and I apologized for. We expressed our same concerns when it came to the rezoning part of it. I do think that the precedent is the biggest issue. I am personally not for the rezoning, but I will say this, that the charm in Homewood to me, and I agree with what Mr. McCullers did say, is that I believe the charm is the people. And, we will take, we volunteer and we ran for election knowing that there were going to be disagreements for 4 years between us and between residents. And we have to look at you guys on as much as we possibly can. And I'll take blame for anything that, is an issue with a resident, but we do the best we can with the information that's given. But, that's what we signed up for. That's what we signed up for when we volunteered and we ran for election, is to deal with the good and the bad from you guys, and from the residents and the businesses. But what's happened recently with all of the development and the attitudes from neighbor to neighbor has just has been disappointing. It's not just this situation, it's been kind of throughout the city. You know, I hope that, you know, we can all get past this. I know there are things we're all gonna disagree upon. I mean, that's just the way it is. But, you know, bring it to us. That's what Walter and I are here for, and that's what the rest of these city council members and the president and the mayor and his staff are here for. That's, you guys bring it to us. Do what you can not to necessarily bring it to neighbors. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. The chair would welcome a motion and a second. The motion on the table to be either approved or denied would be a motion for approval, I think.
I'm sorry. Am I going to get the opportunity at some point to address the public hearing?
Mr. Kessler, I'll certainly give you that opportunity. Come forward.
I'll try to make it as quick as I can.
Please do.
A few things. The first off, I do want to take a moment to defend Mr. Greg Cobb. What he said, it was all true. I met with him last week. We'd come up with a possible alternative version of a plan that we could see through. And I did say that, you know, if we could make it work, that we would be pulling off of the agenda. And Walter probably heard something similar. Now, we never did pull it. And I was also talking to Donna Bridges as early as, or as late as last week when I came up to the city to drop off a building permit application. And I told her we're still struggling with what to do. We may, you know, still present, we may not. This has been a struggle to try to figure out exactly how we wanted to go forward with this. And so there was no bait and switch. You know, if we started off this process, like I said, trying to meet with as many people as we could, the city officials, neighbors. We've met with neighbors on multiple occasions. We had a neighbor block party. I put my name and number out to anybody who would listen. I talked to people on nights and weekends, hours on the phone, trying to answer any questions that I could about this development. If that were the case, and then I would try to do a bait and switch at the last second, I wouldn't have done all that to begin with. And I wouldn't have started this hearing tonight by saying we come in with the understanding that we are looking at a denial. So I just wanted to clear that up. And again, since I try to keep personal and professional separate, but since it was brought up.
Please do.
Since it was brought up, I'll address it. You know, a lot of things come into deciding where you and your family are going to live, and a lot of that decision is not mine alone. I have a wife, and she has more say than I do. And, you know, the timing had a lot to do with this. We knew that this had to go through this process, whereas where we're going to build our home, for multiple reasons, it worked a lot better. My wife has a lot of family. Our kids are friends with their kids. They're walking distance. There's a lot of personal reasons. As to the concerns brought up by the public, and we've heard them before, and that's why we tried to address them as best we could when we made proffers to change our plans. Drainage was one that was brought up a few times. And as we've said, we'd be building, with this plan, if it had gone forward, we would have been building a storm sewer system that was only going to help improve the drainage system as opposed to making it worse. Traffic, as far as the traffic study is concerned, Ms. Smith, by no means did we turn that in as some sort of you know, be all end all. That's when we turn in any city and they ask for a traffic study, we do it the same way as just a baseline. This comes in with the application, nothing more, nothing less. So by no means did we think that that was going to be some expansive traffic study. But as far as the traffic is concerned, part of the problem with that area is, again, if you try to turn left off of Short Salter to go and, you know, by Oglesby, you do have people trying to go both ways, and it doesn't intersect. With our new road, we thought it would help. With our road intersecting with Oglesby, if you could just go straight across from either direction. People coming into Edgewood Manor, if they live there, could come straight across, or you could go straight across Oglesby to go down Broadway. With our plan, we would not be adding any new driveways to Carr Avenue. People talked about the driveways that would be added to Carr with the other plan, and the other NPD plan would add more driveways. And again, in our opinion, that would only make the traffic issue worse. The park, you know, we've heard a lot about the park. As far as the concern about that, we were gonna scratch that anyway. That was gonna be taken out. There was somebody mentioned that it started off as a gated community, and that's what we talked about when we say that there was a lot of misinformation about this piece of property. It was never going to be gated. Was never turned in that way, and all we did was say that we would covenant against it ever being gated. Now, the HOA, she asked about the HOA and could we change that? If we put it in our covenants, we couldn't simply just come back and change that later. You know, the charm and the density are two things that have been brought up a lot. On the charm, whether it's NPD or PRD1, we're going to be building this out, and you know, we're going to build a certain style. But keep in mind, and we've tried to make this point, that the buyers are going to dictate the style of these homes more than probably anybody else, including ourselves. We're going to build what people want, and it's not going to matter what zoning that's going to be in. Now, as far as the density is concerned, two things. One, the PRD1 zoning only allows for us to cover 25% maximum of our area coverage. NPD allows for 50%. So if this goes forward with NPD, more than likely, these are going to be bigger homes than what we would be building if we had PRD1. Under PRD1, we had a certain number that we had to stick to as far as the biggest homes that we could build. And once it was basically an allowance. And once we got to that allowance, we couldn't make them any bigger. With NPD, as big as these lots are going to be now, we could, and won't because they're so deep, but you could build them 10 times bigger than what we would do under PRD1. But density, again, with our presentation that we made originally, the contiguous lots to this piece of property, our average lot size was bigger than the contiguous lots around it. Now, there are bigger lots than ours, and there are smaller lots as well. But as far as it doesn't fit, we just don't believe that that is necessarily true, given that our average lot size is bigger than the rest, contiguous to our piece of property.
Mr. Kessler, I don't mean to be rude.
Sure.
But we need to move on with this vote, please.
I understand. Well, I just would like to make one last
one last
point.
comment. Go.
The residents' concerns are obviously very important with any city council, and you've made the point here tonight again that a lot of people have spoken. They've spoken up tonight, and it's a lot of it is about PRD1 zoning. And in our opinion, again, we try to follow the steps as they're lined out for us. And we met with city staff, and it was brought to us, hey, maybe PRD1 would fit this really well. I think it would be beneficial to the city to consider taking the PRD1 zoning off of the zoning book altogether. Because people are very concerned about if somebody finds 2 acres, they could do it. If there's a precedent that's going to be set, and we bring a plan that, again, people have said that, even city officials have said it's a better plan than the NPD plan. And it's still going to get turned down because it could set a dangerous precedent. I think it should be pulled altogether so that this doesn't happen to another developer. Because, again, we just followed the steps as they were laid out for us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Again, the chair would welcome a motion. Mr. Jones, were you?
Yeah, well, I'll just make the motion. It needs to be in the positive, doesn't it?
Yes, it has to be.
I guess move to approve the preliminary development plan.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Jones, second from Mr. McCluskey. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
And that vote is 10-0 nay. All right, thank you. Move on to 090618, public hearing set for tonight for consideration of the rezoning application of Charles Kessler, Cadco LLC to rezone 800 to 808 Salter Road and 809 Carr Avenue from NPD to PRD1 to develop a 12-lot subdivision. Report has already been done, as far as I'm concerned. But you can go ahead and say it again. Go.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that the committee heard the report from the Planning Commission, which was a 3-3 tie vote in regards to the rezone, and voted it out without recommendation pending the public hearing.
All right. We will again open the public hearing because that's following the legality of this situation. If there is there anyone who would like to speak to this? Let's not word it negatively. You get the opportunity. It's two different opportunities. So.
Just like to say, hey, thank you all for having me. John Chashie, 836 Acton Avenue. I'm against the rezone for the same reasons that I was against the last item on the agenda. I don't think it fits in with the charm of Homewood. I don't think that, I think I only heard of the 19 people, one person that's for this, the other 18 are against it, and I can tell you that there are many, many, many more people that are against this that didn't show up tonight because of this misinformation. So I just wanted that on the record as well, that there was many more against this.
We're aware of that, and I'm not trying to cut you off.
That's all right. I just wanted that one on the record. Well, it's a different menu item, so I wanted to make sure that we got that one. That's right.
But given the emails and the texts that we received,
yes,
I can promise you there were more than
right. Well, if you got it yesterday, you could have emailed us or texted us and said, hey, it's back on, just let you know.
Can I make a comment? Can I address that, please?
Sure.
Listen.
Yeah.
I, just like you, when I entered chamber, learned that it was not on the table. If I had known any time today, I would have communicated it. I thought I was doing the right thing to pass information along to constituents as I received it. So I apologize that I, like you, found out that it was still on the table tonight. Does that address your concern?
Well, I accept your apology, and thank you for apologizing.
I appreciate it.
Well, let me.
That means a lot.
I can respond to him.
You
surely.
do, and I'm going to let you do that. But I want to say to you, at 5:30, the president of this council did not know which direction the developer wanted to go.
Right.
So if I had said anything to y'all in an email, there's a strong probability it would have been incorrect because I didn't know. Not trying to be argumentative.
No, I understand, and I'm not either. I'm
It's
just
a
telling you
statement of fact.
Right. Well,
Please
and
go.
I thought, and I could be wrong, and we can look at the minutes, but I thought one of y'all said we found out yesterday that it was back on. Nobody said that?
No.
Okay.
No, because they, trust me, they
Right.
didn't, I hate
Okay.
that phrase, by the way. It doesn't apply to the car business very well.
Right.
No one knew definitively at 5:30 this afternoon.
Okay. Well,
Thanks.
that's right. And that's all. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
72-year-old Attorney Charles Amos Thompson. Do I need to repeat everything?
No, sir.
Good?
Thank you. We understand your position.
Jennifer Giles, 100 Venetian Way. So I won't repeat, still against it. I just have two things to ask for you guys to consider as you take up, and Walter, I think we talked about this in kind of the conversation we were in before. One, from what I understand of the process, the next step, if the rezone request is turned down, is that then this goes to a resurvey and they continue to look forward to splitting up the lots. And really not specific to this request, but in general, I follow a lot of the different conversations about what's going on around rezoning, and I would really encourage the council to take up quickly some of the items that are on the agenda and talking about ways to address some of the concerns around lot sizes. You know, I really do think that considering moving the when you do a resurvey request, I understand that the requirement is that it can be resurveyed and split up so that it's 85% of the impact area. I know that at one point that used to be 100%, went down to 85%. I would really encourage us to take it back to 100% so that we reduce the continual dividing and subdividing. When we do that, similar to I think something that was recently done on a development that was up back behind Edgewood near the middle school, I would also suggest considering removing homes that have variances or lots that have variances from an impact area calculation. I understand there was a situation where a house kind of got built where it wasn't supposed to. We allowed the developer and the builder to go forward. I think that's probably a fair compromise, but the decision was we're not going to allow that mistake to now set a precedent on the rest of the house. And I think if you hear some of the folks who are talking tonight, you know, the fear is that if we continue in this path and allow, now I don't know if this would be in time, and I'm not certainly advocating that, but for example, the variances that were allowed on the triangle lots, lovely people, but still that creates congestion there, to set a precedent for resurveying that piece of land, then you've continued down the path. So I urge you to continue to look for ways to get our NPD back to the state it was before, get back to 100%, consider not having the impact size, the impact area, consider things with variances. And then just to speak to the charm of Homewood, I kind of love what's going on here. I understand it's painful for some of our citizens, but there are folks and there are neighbors who are connecting and having a real debate about things that are important to us. Our community, our density, our schools, it's important. And yes, it gets heated, but the important part and the charm of Homewood is when we're done, we can all then still shake hands and smile and hug and go to church together and go to Oxmoor Bar and Grill. Please support it. I don't think they're doing well. And have a beer or whatever it is. But that's the charm of Homewood to me, is having a civil, heated debate about the issues that are important to us, and then still going back and being the neighbors we always have been. That's all I have.
Well said. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Lisa Group. Again, Ms. 3.5 minutes. I agree with what she said, and I do not support any zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Amanda Flavin, just wanted to reiterate again that I am against this rezoning, and I ask that you all deny it.
Thank you. If there's no one else, then we will close this public hearing and ask for a motion from the council.
Make a quick comment.
Sure, Mr. Thames.
Just, Mrs. Giles, just to let you know, at the Planning Commission level and the Zoning Book Subcommittee, there are changes being considered right now, sort of along the lines of what you were requesting. And I did just want to say, just because I have the dubious distinction of getting to be on both the Planning Commission and the City Council, where we get to vote for controversial things twice, the Planning Commission takes their duties extremely seriously when it comes to addressing all issues, but especially these controversial issues. I know someone made the comment they couldn't believe that the proposed preliminary development plan had been approved 7-0. Well, the Planning Commission absolutely separates the two items. They were looking at a preliminary development plan. Does that plan work, yay or nay? It does. You notice the zoning vote was very different with a 3-3 tie. So it's very difficult. We do have to judge based on the rules we have on the books. Are those rules perfect? No, they're not. We're constantly trying to update and improve those. We have a BZA for variance requests. I know some of our Planning Commission members and I think BZA members have been here tonight. So just keep that in mind. And I will say, having been at all levels of this discussion, the vast majority of everyone involved has been extremely articulate and extremely polite. There have been a few outliers. So thank you for that. When people are here, when people are face to face, most everybody realizes we're neighbors, and tomorrow we'll go back to being just that, neighbors. The internet can be a little bit different, but in the end, I know that everyone understands we all have jobs to do. Sometimes those are tough jobs, but we still do them.
Thank you, Mr. Thames. With that, Chair would welcome a motion in a second. Motion from Mr. McCluskey, second from Mr. Jones. Again, all in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay. And the nays have it 10-0. Okay? Thank you very much. We're going to move on to 1406-18, public hearing set for August 13th, 2018 at 6 p.m. for consideration to adopt changes to the zoning ordinances. Homewood Planning Commission and Greg Cobb have asked for this. This will be carried over and again set for August 13th. 0307-18, public hearing set for August 13th at 6 p.m. for consideration of a sign variance at 828 Green Springs Highway. Requested by Megan Ellis, Greg Cobb, and our BZ department. This too is carried over for public hearing set for August 13th, 2018 at 6 p.m. 1312-17, request for consideration of Regional Planning Commission's Heart of Homewood update, Ms. Andrus. Requested by Ms. Andrus, and a report from Mr. Thames.
Yes, sir. We saw the presentation from the RPC last week in committee. This was their draft presentation of the Heart of Homewood plan, which is an update to our master plan in the downtown area. The committee voted 5-0, I believe, to send this to full council with a positive recommendation for the council to then vote to send that to the Planning Commission for consideration and adoption.
All right, so the motion is from Planning and Development, which is positive. Any other questions or comments? I'll do one quick editorial one. Even though I wasn't here for the presentation, I've had a chance to read it, and I am awed, as in AWED. So that's my opinion. With that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Good. 13-12-17 is passed unanimously. And hopefully, Mr. Kendrick, I didn't influence in any way. All right, 070618 is a request to approve the city attorney entering into negotiations with Milo's Teas for a headquarter relocation requested by myself. We had carried this over. I had agreed this evening to have a couple of folks from Milo's to come speak to this matter. If you'll introduce yourselves and explain your responsibilities.
Thank you, Council President Limbaugh. So good evening. My name is Trey Hill. I am an economic development lawyer with Bradley here in town. And I'm here on behalf of my client, Milo's Tea Company, Inc. With me this evening is Christy Thomas, who is Milo's Tea's CFO. I was going to turn it over to Christy in a few minutes if the council is so inclined. But before doing so, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the company and the project that we're here to discuss with you this evening, and to apologize personally to Council President Limbaugh and Councilor Thames, the rest of the council, and Mayor McBrayer. The timing of this project dictates us coming back before the full council. Instead of going through the Planning and Development Committee in the ordinary course, we had negotiated a revised abatement request over the weekend. Mike did a fantastic job, as he always does, where we are now requesting a 5-year property tax abatement in connection with this potential headquarters relocation instead of the original 10-year abatement request that we had sent in through Councilor Thames back in June. So just a minute about Milo's Tea. They were founded back in 1946, and it's one of the most recognizable tea manufacturing companies in the U.S. They've experienced tremendous growth over the years to the point where they've just run out of space at their existing facility in Bessemer. And so they've undertaken a site selection process to house their headquarters operations and have ideally located, zeroed in on 26,000 square feet of space in the Lakeshore Park Plaza building. It's the Black Mirror face building on the southwest intersection of Lakeshore and 31. Milo's Tea and the landlord would spend about $1.8 million to equip and renovate the 26,000 square feet of space. And Milo's Tea would move 49 of their corporate headquarters operations folks from Bessemer to Homewood, and then would grow the head count by 36 jobs roughly over 5 years. These jobs are very high-paying jobs. All told, the payroll for the 86 new people would be $10.5 million. And so with a high payroll comes a high business license tax that the city would stand to generate. I had provided a tax revenue forecast for the council's consideration attached to the letter that I sent to Councilor Thames back in June, which estimates an expected direct and indirect property tax, sales and use tax, business license tax generation for the city of Homewood of over $1 million over the 10 years. So I wanted to clarify what the current abatement request on the table is after discussing with Mike over the weekend. So Milo's Tea is looking for a 5-year property tax abatement instead of a 10-year on any property purchased on or before October 1st of 2019, which is next year's tax lien date. and then a sales and use tax abatement during the construction period. The timing is such where if this project were to move forward with the council's approval, construction would begin almost immediately, and furniture, fixture, and equipment purchases would be done very quickly. And so that's why we are coming before the council in full tonight instead of going back with the new revised, reduced proposal through Britt's committee. So based on that $1.8 million capital investment that Milo's Tea is looking to incur, the property tax abatement over the 5 years, accounting for depreciation, is roughly $28,000. About half of that is attributed to the city of Homewood. The remainder, of course, is Jefferson County and the state of Alabama. And the total abated sales and use tax is about $118,000, but just $44,000 of it is for the city of Homewood. So I think that if the council were to approve the revised request on the table, the deal would happen, Milo's Tea would move forward, and Homewood would have a very attractive homegrown company that is at an inflection point that Christy will talk about, where they're really looking to grow. So with that, Christy, do you mind spending a minute, if y'all are okay?
Wait just
Sure.
Since you're in charge of the proposal,
Yeah.
from your end, Mr. Jones has a question, and perhaps others as well.
No, I mean, just in terms of timing, you're asking for a decision tonight?
I am.
What was wrong with sending it through the normal process through finance and?
Well, we did. We sent it through the normal process, but our original request was a 10-year property tax abatement. And so through committee, Mike was authorized to negotiate with Milo's Tea, which we did Friday and over the weekend, to reduce the property tax abatement in half, such that now we're asking for a 5-year instead of a 10-year. And instead of going back before the Planning and Development Committee on August 6th, followed by the next regularly scheduled meeting on the 13th, we wanted to come back in full to the council tonight.
Yeah, it was carried over in finance.
Yeah, we carried it over so that Mike could negotiate.
Report back.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the plan.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else so far?
Question?
Your turn.
Great, thank you.
We need the microphone.
I
Thanks.
know.
I know.
Soft voiced.
I know.
So I appreciate first you guys being willing to let us talk tonight and talk to you about this. It's not a huge project for Homewood, but it's a very large project for Milo's. We've grown tremendously. We are completely out of space in Bessemer. And as we really started this project, we wanted to find a city that would partner with us the way that they have. We've taken a 50,000 square foot plant, it's now 150,000 square feet, and we went from 3 production people to now over 250. So we're growing, we're busting at the seams. We need to get our professional and administrative staff out of there. To get out of the way, we don't need to be taking up space with offices, we need them producing tea for us. A side note with just how big it's really gotten, there's tea in 45 states. This says Alabama on it. So it's something to be really proud of. We want a community that we can bring our professional staff into, that they can live and work and raise their families all right there together. That's what we've experienced in the past. This is a nice location for us. It's very close to be able to get back and forth to the plant so that we can continue to be a partner with the operations folks out there. And I would just ask that you really consider this. I think we could bring something to Homewood as much as what you guys can partner with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of either of these folks, other than what's already been asked? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I know there's certainly concerns council-wide with this being outside the realm of how we would normally process something like this. But the chair's going to request a motion.
Mr. President, if I may, I just want to register my concerns as well. I just haven't had sufficient amount of time to see a proposal at all. I appreciate the information. and I certainly appreciate the urgency of it, but not to the extent of a vote tonight. I certainly would appreciate the opportunity to discuss this further in committee so that I could better formulate something as frankly extraordinary as these tax incentives. I've certainly made myself known on some of these tax incentive issues in the past.
Yes, you have, sir.
And but notwithstanding that, I would just appreciate the opportunity to bring this to committee, not for some elaborate delay or anything, but just so we can fully consider what we're doing with regard to special consideration for this project. We have a lot of corporate citizens who don't get the tax incentives, and certainly there are projects and reasons to provide them. And with that, I would ask that this item do go through, be sent through finance, so that, because we didn't have a proposal. In fact, I only thought the proposal was for our city attorney to negotiate. I anticipated a proposal would be coming back for us so we could look at it and better understand it and make a decision whether good or bad. And so with that, Mr. President, I would recommend sending this back to committee so we can adequately consider this. And can't tell you how excited all of us would be about the prospects of this wonderful company and headquarters coming to our city. There's no question about that. But it is a matter of having some time to consider and deliberate over it, particularly something as extraordinary as tax incentives that we're talking about providing this company that we certainly don't provide most of our companies in our city.
Well, that's true. Mr. Kendrick, is there any need for a vote on this?
Yes, sir. I think unless there's an objection, Mr. Wright's would be a motion.
Okay, so yours is a motion, Mr. Wright.
Yes, sir, it would be a motion.
Is there a second? Mr. Higginbotham has seconded it. And I'll.
It was the motion.
To refer it back to finance and, was it in planning and development or strictly in finance?
No, it was in finance.
It was in finance.
Okay,
Finance.
it's to refer it back to finance.
Mr. President, may I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
What is the impact to Milo's of the delay if we push this back to committee?
Would one of you be willing to address that, please? It's a fair question, Mr. Gwaltney.
A 2-week delay.
I've been instructed that the delay would be significant. They are looking to execute the lease and purchase their FF&E under their timeline in order to be operational by the end of October. And a 3-week delay, if we were to go back in the ordinary course through the Planning Development Committee on August 6th, followed by the next regularly scheduled meeting, would be very detrimental, is my understanding.
Mr. Jones, I see a question.
Well, no, what does this have to do with the Planning and Development Committee?
It did. It was my confusion.
Oh, okay. So we're talking
Finance,
about.
I'm sorry.
If it was in finance last week, and we instructed Mr. Kendrick to negotiate, but it would come back to.
To finance, yes.
Finance.
It would.
My mistake,
And then
Mr. Jones.
it would go to council on the 13th unless we had a special
Right.
call. Okay. I mean, Mr. Kendrick, are you comfortable with the changes that have been made?
Yeah, I sent you the resolution approving it. It's not an issue for me. But the application, I'm a little, I guess, says that the improvements will be constructed to be for possession on January 31, 2019. What's October got to do with anything?
Well, so the outside date by which the project would be placed in service, we have estimated as being January 31st, 2019. I always instruct my clients in any event to add in a buffer to account for unforeseen construction delays. And so that's what that is encompassing.
Well, that's the application to the Alabama Department of Revenue.
Correct.
So I assume it's correct.
Yes, that's certainly a good faith estimate, which is what the application requires.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Gwaltney?
It did, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So we have a motion and a second to send this back to finance. Well, actually, Mr. Jones and Mr. Higginbotham, we're going to give it to Mr. Higginbotham.
Mr. Wright made the motion.
Made the motion, and Mr. Higginbotham seconded. All in favor for this signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm going to not vote on this particular item because of my knowledge of the family. I don't think it'd be appropriate.
Nay.
Okay, so my question is, in consideration of what these individuals have said, would it be possible to have a called special meeting for finance, Mr. Jones? I'll put you on the spot just a little bit.
Well, that's really not the problem. The problem is our next council meeting is not until the 13th. That's not finance meeting. It's really just the, I mean, we'd have to call a special called council meeting.
You could. You could have finance and special call.
So we plan on having finance next Monday at 5 o'clock,
Next Monday, the 30th?
the 30th.
We don't have a meeting on the 30th.
You can do that.
Skip the 5th.
But see, then this is a fifth.
Well, I wanted to go ahead
My
and,
preference would be to do that, yes.
I wanted to go ahead and have finance and get it over with.
He's not going to be in
Oh.
attendance, but
Well.
I don't need to be, but
Okay.
I planned a trip to the three grandsons to take them to
Well.
the Baseball Hall of Fame because it's an off week.
all right, move on. Committee referral agenda. Chair would welcome a motion for approval and a second. Motion from Mr. Higginbotham, second from
Second.
Ms.
Sorry.
Andrus.
Sorry.
She was slightly louder
was
than
loud.
Ms. Smith. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Committee referral is approved. All right, we'll move on to other new business. 160718, request to amend Fund 26, GLW 2016, to fund construction projects. Request by Robert Burgett, our finance director. Chair would welcome a motion. Well, before we do that, Mr. Burgett, would you explain what this is?
Yes, sir. We allocated money for POs, for purchase orders for our three construction projects: the public safety building, the park project, and the Board of Education. At this time, the funds that we had allocated have all been exhausted by writing POs, and we need to transfer money, do a line item budget, so we can have funds to continue to issue POs for the projects. I got very detailed information from Harbor Construction. They're requesting $2,500,000 till August the 31st. That should be sufficient funding for them. $6,750,000 for the public safety building is sufficient. And we got, I didn't get detailed information from Tommy Alfano concerning BOE. He requested $28 million, and I've spoke with some people, and at this time, we're going to ask that we only transfer $14 million in that account.
Mr. Jones, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I thought we were going to send this out today for us to.
And I do apologize for that. I got the information at 4:30.
Right.
So I do apologize.
I'm just not comfortable. I mean, the whole point of how we structured the finance meetings as it related to all these projects was that we were going to get an ongoing update, and we have a placeholder for all these projects within finance that we were going to get heads up in advance on here are projects that are coming before us and that need to be funded, and we're running low on particular funds, so we need to approve those. I thought that was the whole point, so we wouldn't have a situation like tonight where you don't get the information. I know I spoke with you this morning. You were expecting that immediately, but you didn't get it until close of day, and none of us got to even review that. So I haven't seen it either. along with the withdrawal that I thought was going to happen as well. But in any event, I mean, these just seem like arbitrary numbers. I mean,
Now, with the.
Two are not. The
Right.
public safety and the
public
parks
safety
are not
and
arbitrary
the park
numbers.
they are, that, I have a detailed outlay of every dollar they're gonna spend in the next 6 weeks. But I do not with the Board of Education. I got an email from the Board of Education requesting $28 million funding through August 31st. That's all I got. And I asked for a detailed listing.
An alternative, Mr. Jones, and I do want to hear what you have to say, because I see it on your face, is we could approve the public safety and the park portion of it and not approve the other, just as a thought.
yeah, that would make me feel more comfortable because we hadn't gotten any report from the Board of Education in the last month, and they didn't come to the last meeting. So I'd be comfortable approving the fund transfers for the park and public safety building. But
May I ask one question as well? Is this
Sure.
not the second or third time we've asked them for a breakdown, and we have got basically a goose egg?
Yes. Mr. Wright, speak.
No, I mean, I don't know if it's been that many times. I don't disagree that if Robert asked for detailed information, he should get that information.
He should.
And, you know, be glad to talk with the schools and get that information if it's in a committee and certainly give them a clear indication of what's going to be needed going forward. Because if our finance officer asks for that, I think you ought to be able to get that like the other projects. So.
All right, so we have a motion from Mr. Jones. We have a second from Mr. McCluskey. All in favor? Again, understanding that we're talking about approving two of the three items, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Sorry. That is Resolution 18102, modified to exclude the schools.
Watching Miss Andrews eat her apples making me hungry.
I'm
so.
sorry, I did turn my microphone off. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Limbaugh, I apologize. Could you tell me who was first and second on that?
Mr. Jones was first, and Mr. McCluskey was second.
Thank you.
All right, 170718, request for consideration of approval of vouchers for the period of July 11th through July 22nd, 2018. City Treasurer, Finance Committee, Mr. Jones.
yes, sir, I spent the morning with Mr. Burgett, so everything was answered, so I would move for approval of the vouchers being paid.
Thank you. We have a motion from Mr. Jones, second from Mr. Gwaltney, because I was looking at him. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. All right, 180718, request for consideration of a crosswalk across University Park Place at the south intersection with South Lakeshore Drive, requested by Chief Ross. First reading, Mr. Kendrick.
It's an ordinance to provide for the installation of a pedestrian crosswalk across University Park Place at the south intersection with South Lakeshore Drive in the city. Be it ordained by the city as follows. Chief of Police is directed to install a pedestrian crosswalk across University Park Place on the south side of the intersection of University Park Place with South Lakeshore Drive. Section 2, that all drivers of motor vehicles defined by the Highway Code of the State of Alabama shall yield to pedestrians located within the crosswalk as defined above. Section 3, that any person found guilty of a violation of this ordinance shall be punished as provided by Section 1-8 of the Code of Ordinances. Section 4, that all ordinances or departures of ordinance contrary to the provisions hereof are specifically repealed. Section 5, if any part of provision of the ordinance declared to be unconstitutional or invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, all of the parts remain in full force and effect. And Section 6, that provisions of this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon its adoption by the city council and approval by the mayor or as otherwise becoming law.
Thank you, sir. Chair would welcome a motion and a second for unanimous consent.
Well, could I ask a question? Just because it is.
Procedurally, can we tackle that first and then you ask your question?
Okay.
Need a motion and a second for unanimous consent.
Second.
Motion from Mr. McCluskey, second from Mr. Gwaltney. Now, your question, Mrs. Smith.
I'm wondering why this didn't go to public safety. I'm just curious what the urgency is.
Because Dr. Maddox had called and asked that we do it because school starts the 8th, and they were going to prepare it this week. So what's happened is Sanford's going to let them either lease or use 70 to 80 parking spaces at the soccer fields.
Okay.
And they need it for a safety issue. Otherwise, it would have gone to public safety.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
And just for the record, JJ and I did speak about this, so.
Okay,
Yep.
excellent. Thank you.
Roll call, Mr. Burgett.
Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Thames?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Higginbotham? Yes. Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mrs. Andrus?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
And Mr. Limbaugh?
Yes. All right, so this will be ordinance 2709. Motion by Mr. McCluskey, second by Mr. Higginbotham for adoption. Roll call again, please.
Mr. Gwaltney?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Thames?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Yeah.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wyatt?
Yes.
Mrs. Andrus?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
And Mr. Limbaugh?
Yes, so 2709 ordinance is approved unanimously. And Mr. Bischoff, if you'll make that happen, we would appreciate that. Finally, 200718, request for the city council to authorize the mayor to execute the contract with Jefferson County for the Rosedale Sidewalk Improvements Phase 6, requested by Greg Cobb and BEZ. Chair would welcome a motion and a second.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Thames, second by Mr. Gwaltney. Any further discussion?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I have no objection, probably before I ask a question. So where are these sidewalks, with this phase, where does this, do you know?
Help us, Mayor. No, that was the first thing I did was look for Mr. Cobb.
Traditionally, what happens is, I'm so sorry, I wasn't expecting to speak on it, but the gentleman that helped us gather a lot of information over there, they basically make recommendations as to where the sidewalks should go. Because it's their money. It's traditionally about $200,000 a year that we get in grants.
Is it CDBG or?
It is.
Okay.
It comes from the Human Community Services and Economic Development Department of the Jefferson County. It's
Okay.
federal funds used to.
That's fine. So there's-
in specific low-income jurisdiction.
So there's just a list of sidewalks, and we've just reached that part of the list at this point.
Jefferson County's really come up with a
Yeah,
list.
this is Jefferson County's list, not the city of Homewood's list.
And it's,
But again, the cost to us is,
I understand. No.
Dr. Hamilton's who I was trying to think of.
Yeah, okay. And again, I have no objection. I was
No,
just
no,
trying
no,
to understand
no.
how we, I know this is phase 6, I'm just wondering where we got to what's in phase 6. That's, you've answered my question. Thank you.
The county picks the locations and they fund it.
all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And therefore, that is unanimous, and we reach the end of our agenda. And Mayor, your turn. Great. You know, I keep saying I'm going to start with the opposite end one time. I think this may be a good night to do that. Mr. Wright?
I would like Public Works at 5 p.m.
Not an option, sorry.
Yeah, off the table.
I would like special dispensation. I would move for approval. We actually are going to have a Public Works meeting, and
How long is finance going to be, sir?
I won't know how to behave at 5:30.
Well, that's true.
We gotta figure out what's not.
Well, I mean, it's really kind of a simple question. Do we want to consider the Milo's opportunity in a manner fitting their request or not? And I'm okay with
I would say, I'd like to have it on the 6th at 5.
Okay. How long?
30 minutes.
Okay, 5:30 will be fine.
Are you recording this, Mr. Burgett?
And I believe.
For multiple reasons.
And I believe I'll.
How much time?
I'll
do
go
you
ahead and
need?
try 15 minutes, and I'm going to put pressure on myself, so, which is uncharacteristic for my committee. So, but we will try to get it done in 15 minutes.
Anything else, Mr. Wright?
There's a lot of pressure getting here at 5:45. I like the, I like being at the end where there's no pressure, but
I want to point out to you, I've been promising you this for 6 years. I won't.
quid pro quo. I'll get it back to you someday. So thank you, Mr. President.
Ms. Andrews?
Will we then meet after the committee meetings to have a special council to vote on anything that comes out of finance? Would that help the Milo situation?
It could.
Okay.
We'll offer
We'll
that
get
to
there.
them and see what
Okay.
happens.
I wanted to first say that I enjoyed the retirement party for Shiloh and Justice, Mr. Gwaltney, Mr. Higginbotham, the mayor. We were all there, and it was really great to hear the stories of the dogs and the officers that worked with the dogs. And the quote that I couldn't just get out of my head was the officer that said he made the commitment, Sergeant Moat said he made the commitment to take care of the dog for the rest of his life, that the dog had taken care of him for 5 years, and that he would be there. I just really, and the photographer, I don't remember her name, but she said the two things that are dear to her were the dogs and law enforcement, and this brought two things together. She just took some beautiful pictures of the dogs, and it was just a really neat celebration. I got to bring my son. I enjoyed it very much. I wanted everyone here to put September 29th on their calendars. The Birmingham Track Club and the Track Shack will be hosting an early morning. Now, you don't have to come early, but we will be having a run social / bridge fundraiser at Over Easy. I'm trying to raise $15,000 from those entities to go
That
to
sounds potentially painful.
Yeah, you don't have to run and you don't have to be, but we will have lots of politicians there. Lots of our state representatives will be there. Everyone's very excited about this project, and this will bring in some private funding for our proposed bridge. And then finally, I would like to mention our own Sydney Cromwell and congratulate her for her first place award from the Alabama Press Association and their Better Newspaper Contest. Actual quote from this year. Yep.
Hold it. I hope it wasn't an expose on the city council side.
If it was, it hadn't been published yet, so.
Actual quote from this year's judges, quote, "Community journalism needs more Cromwells." So congrats to her. And that's it.
Mr. Watt?
First of all, I want to thank Mr. Bischoff and Mr. Squires for the tree fell onto power lines and across Ridge Road early on Saturday morning, and they were helpful, and thank you to the fire department. They all got out, and there was a pole that was about to fall. It was about to be a bad situation. They blocked off the road early in the morning, so I appreciate y'all jumping on that. Secondly, the Homewood football team will be having and the youth football will be having Jersey night on August 17th. Because of the construction at Waldrop Stadium this year, it will be at Sanford. And Sanford's going to do fireworks and all kinds of stuff. And the kids are going to be on the big screen as they run out and the whole deal. So that Homewood Athletic Foundation is running the show again, and we've been working with Sanford on it. So please keep that in mind for the night of the 17th, 1 week before the first game at Sanford.
Excellent. Ms. Smith?
I can't really tell if I need to sit special works, but I'm gonna at 5:45, and I'm just gonna do 15 minutes, so I'll be done at 6.
Special works, I love it.
Did I say special works?
Special works.
You did.
It is after 8 o'clock, so special works it is at 5:45 on August the 6th.
We're actually combining our committees.
Right. We're just gonna do a joint meeting. All right, I'm good. That's it.
Sorry, Mr. Kendrick, sometimes we get outside the boundaries just a hair. Mr. Jones?
Have fun next week, Mr. Kendrick.
Thank
We're
you.
not having a
I
meeting.
appreciate it.
So, no.
This is a trip that I obligated to go to in January, and my 3 grandsons would shoot me and you.
You need me to fly you up there?
There you go.
So there's 9 of us going. Can you get all
Oh,
that?
I can't fit that many in my airplane. Okay, that'll be all. No further comment.
Thank you. Mr. McCluskey?
So if you were special works, then I have public issues.
We
all actually have public issues, don't
Mr.
we?
McCluskey. You do.
That's funny.
This is bad.
How long did you need, Ms. Smith?
I'm just doing 15 minutes, so I'll be done at 6.
Okay, 6 o'clock, and I'll need.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. First, I want to apologize to my colleagues. I was a few minutes late tonight. My son is a freshman in the band, and they just started 3 days, and he was not feeling very well. And I don't know if that was a consequence of the to practices earlier today or not, but I was with him, and so that was why I was a few minutes late. Other than that, I just want to remind everybody every Tuesday night that West Homewood is the place to be. West Homewood Farmers Market, great fresh produce, incredible vendors, fantastic music. It makes Tuesday almost bearable. So I invite everybody to come out and have a good time. 5 to 8. Thanks.
Mr. Thames, P&D.
6:15, P&D, 15 minutes. Could have been worse.
Tell me how it feels, okay?
Not so bad.
I don't intend to make it a regular habit, Mr. Thames.
Of course. Real quick, somebody in the public hearing said that we should have a published rule of thumb about what the city wants when it comes to rezoning. We do. It's called a master plan.
And a zoning ordinance.
And a zoning book.
And I have yet to experience a rezone request that was not controversial, whether it was in the plan or not. So.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gwaltney?
It's kind of refreshing to go last. I can keep you all hostage for a while. Let me pull up my notes. Now, I just wanted to mention on Wednesday of last week, Britt and I had the pleasure of welcoming our new Sims Garden caretaker, Amy Milam. So we're really excited. We had a good turnout. We actually got to see the beehive that's over there in the garden get opened up and check on it. So we've got a lot of good things going on. We're excited about what's going to happen in Sims Garden. Thank you to JJ and the mayor for your assistance with everything that's been going on over there. Berkeley has been very helpful with his crews getting things cleaned up. So if you haven't been by the garden, swing by and check out. It looks markedly improved compared to where it was. Can't get my words out. Just a reflection on the discussion tonight. I thought it was very good, barring a couple of odd comments, but I felt like we had a good civil conversation with the community about a topic that was very heated, and I feel like we came to a good resolution. I do hope that neighbors can be neighbors again and not have to feel awkward when they're in their yards, and hopefully people will take comments made to heart and improve our community.
Well said. Thank you. With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.